Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out InvestFourMore.com. Hi, everyone. Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. Welcome to another Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. I've got a great guest this week, Anson Young, who is actually in Colorado. So he is a real estate investor, real estate agent, flips, wholesales, and he's doing it all in a very, very tough market right now, which is Denver. So glad to have Anson on. How are you doing today, Anson? What's going on?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing good. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
Now you're in Denver, so you're about 50 miles, 60 miles from me. We know how hot Colorado is. I think Denver's even hotter than where I'm at. Is it still as hot right now as it has been the last year or two?
I'd say that right now it's slowed down just a tiny bit, and it's just based on inventory numbers. But those have risen just a little bit. I think people kind of get wind that things are hot, and it's 6 months to a year later than the actual trend, and then they start flooding the house market with their houses. They say, "Oh, now's a great time to sell." So a bunch kind of spike up, but that's not to say that things aren't extremely difficult right now. In total, I'd say it's eased up maybe 2%, but it has eased up just a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it's tough out there, and I know I saw some statistics that said Denver and Colorado is the highest appreciating market in the country this last year, so even higher than California. So
yeah, I've read that too.
It's
crazy.
Tough. Well, we'll talk about that here later. First off, I'd love to share a little bit more about yourself, how you got started in real estate, what made you want to get into real estate, and how that process looked. So first off, what were you doing before you became a real estate or you got into real estate?
Well, I started off as just another guy in a cubicle at an IT company and thought that IT was my future. I enjoy it. I enjoy the technology and everything and what I was doing. And then like everybody else around that time, I got laid off and was kind of deciding what I wanted to do next. So I did bartend for a little bit, and that was hugely fun because I'm social and like hanging out with people. And then it came to a crossroads where I either double down on IT or I do something completely different. And so real estate was hugely appealing to me and always has been. So that's kind of the route that I decided to go.
I've interviewed quite a few people who are investors and agents. Did you start out as an agent or did you start out as an investor? Which one drew you in first?
I started out as an investor. That drew me in first. My wife and I had just moved to Phoenix. On the drive down there, we would alternate driving the U-Haul down there. And it was just kind of we were between a few things. So we would move down closer to one of my brothers was living down there. So I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad on the way down there when it was her turn to drive. And so by the time we actually reached Phoenix, I had finished that book and I felt like I kind of had this new start. I was in a new city. I had a new attitude and outlook and decided that investing was kind of my future. So we were there for 2 years. I did a deal, my first deal down there. And then we just decided to move back because Colorado is way better than Arizona on any day of the week. But so we decided to move back. And when I hit the ground here, it kind of felt like starting over again because I'm in a brand new market. I don't understand it as well as Phoenix. And so what I did was I ended up working for an agent as kind of a BPO helper, ran all their short sales, stuff like that. And then within a year, I decided, you know what? I think I'm just going to get my own license. Like this totally makes sense. I can do both. I can do, normal agent stuff and I can do investor stuff. At the end of the day, I think that was absolutely the best choice. It was, a year after I got back and I got my license and I've had it ever since. So
when you first started in Phoenix, obviously, you were in a huge transition stage. Were you trying to wholesale? Were you trying to flip houses? What was your first deal you tried to do as an investor?
The first deal I tried to do was pretty much a mess. It was mainly because I didn't have kind of a laser focus on one thing. I was being taught by a mentor who had 10 different strategies, and when you're just starting out, that can do nothing but just scatter you all over the place. So when I finally did get a deal, I tried to lease option it, but it was half-hearted attempt at best. And then, at the end of the day, my wife and I just decided to actually move in, and we moved in and we fixed up some things over the course of a year, and then we sold it. It's not a very sexy story by any means, but it's definitely, the house was undervalued. The market was going crazy. It was like 44% appreciation or something just ridiculous. And so, we did buy it right, but we did end up moving into it and then sold it, and I think we made about $50,000 on it when we moved. But I was so scattered. If at the time I should have, either kept it as a rental, maybe leased it for 6 months and then sold it on the market since the appreciation was so high. It could have been like a wholesale type deal, but I didn't know what I was doing, so we made the best of it. So.
Nice. Well, I would think for their first deal, most people would be pretty happy with the $50,000 profit. So even if it did take you a year,
that's true.
Nice. No, I'd say it's about half and half on the people I interview, whether they made money or lost money on their first deal.
Sure. I mean, it totally makes sense.
It's tough, especially flipping. I mean, there's just
absolutely
unknowns. It's crazy.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many things wrapped up into that it's, and then losing money, that could just be an experience, and then you get your education and you paid for it and you move on and you learn from it. And there's been those over the years, but I guess you can say that we did luck out on that one, that we should be pretty happy about it. So, and we are, of course. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I interviewed Jim Hunsinger last week, who's an investor and agent in Chicago. And he said every time he lost money, he thought of it as a year of college because he never went to college.
Oh, so yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But very cool. So you moved to Colorado, were you doing investing in Colorado, or did you kind of get hooked up with the agent first and get your license first before you started investing here?
Yeah, I did hook up with the agent first. I really wanted to learn the market, and that was honestly the best way to do it. I mean, I was doing, a few dozen BPOs a week, which, as you know, being an REO guy, broker price opinion, basically I'm trying to figure out what the value of a house is. And when you do enough of those, you get a really good idea of what's kind of going on in the market, what neighborhoods are doing what. And so I really wanted to just dive in and learn the market, and then kind of take that knowledge and build upon it. So for about a year or so, I was doing that, and it was very early in the short sale game. So I learned how to do short sales that year as well. And there was almost no other agents in our office doing it. So I made pretty decent money running other people's short sales as well, which then obviously helped me in the next phase when I started doing short sale investment and stuff like that. And it was probably about a year and a half before I did another deal. And it was an REO deal where I partnered up with another agent, where I had the deal, he had the money, and I had no money or not enough money to do that deal. So he came in with all cash. I came in with the deal. We partnered up, and that one turned out really well. So, but it did take about a year and a half from landing in Colorado to being comfortable to do the next deal.
That's great. I think that is probably the perfect job to start out with as an investor.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you said, yeah, broker price opinions, all they do is teach you values in the market and what's going on. And that's probably the most important thing you can know as an investor.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only having your license, I don't perfectly understand how guys without licenses do this job without having direct access to the most important data that's out there. There's a lot of workarounds to that, but having your license, and then obviously I couldn't ask for a better start, just doing BPOs, which was boring at the time, but absolutely taught me a huge amount of fundamentals on valuation, after repair value, what things are worth at a glance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was doing, they are very boring. It's basically filling out a report, but it does teach you a lot. And I've done a lot of BPOs. I don't do them anymore. My staff does them now, but yeah, I know what it's like to go through 20 BPOs a week. It's not the most fun.
Well, no, exactly. But I think it's great. It's great fundamental knowledge. So if I had that in Arizona, I may have landed quicker here. I feel like somebody like you and me with the MLS and the BPO background, we can land in any market. And as long as we have access to the data, it might only take us a few weeks before we start landing deals based on our knowledge. It's totally transferable. Of course, there's little market quirks here and there, like that we wouldn't know. This street's doing this or something's being built over there. Those little things. But overall, I mean, the data is 90% of where the information's at when it pertains to investing. And if you have that valuation background, I feel like you can land anywhere. You could drop Mark in, Toledo, Ohio, and it won't take him long with the right access to the data before he's, doing deals. So I think it's fundamental. I mean, I'm so glad that I got that start for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because the way the banks and asset management companies create those BPOs is they try and make them so that agents can't screw them up. They're very strict on the rules, on the square footage, on guidelines. So it's really hard. You might be off in value 10 or 15%, but you really have to screw something up to be completely off base. And so, yeah, if you can take that same knowledge or technical ability to another market, you could get started very easy. That's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you've seen it with wholesalers who send you comps, and you've seen hundreds and hundreds of comps, and you see, they're comping out something that's 500-600 square feet bigger, but they're trying to liken your smaller house to that one, and that wouldn't fly, at the bank, because they would immediately just reject it, or their system wouldn't even accept it. And so you get very tight in how close you can comp things, and I think that just makes you a better investor at the end of the day.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, I've seen those. I've seen a lot of wholesalers. So they'll use properties that are 2 miles away. One's next to the college and one's 2 miles away in a completely different market, trying to compare them. And
they're just trying to stretch for that value. And, and we've been taught that you can't do that. So
exactly. So you got into the flip with a partner. How quickly did things move for you after that first flip? Did you start doing multiple flips? Was it kind of a one at a time type of deal? How did that work out?
So right after that one closed, I ended up buying 2 at the same time, and it was right after my son was born. So right after he came home from the hospital, I had 3 mortgage payments all of a sudden because I had two flip houses, and thankfully that those went well. But it kind of snowballed from there, and it's kind of gained momentum and lost momentum as the market's done its thing. Back in 2010, obviously it was a totally different market when I was doing multiple flips like that. And then having the licenses has enabled me to keep income coming in with just doing license activities. I'll do investment activities, and it's kept things pretty steady, which is nice. So
now in 2010, I know you were doing quite a bit. How many flips were you doing at a time at the peak of your flipping?
Peak of my flipping was probably 2 years ago with a partner, and we were doing about 8 or 9 at a time. We did dissolve that partnership. No love lost. We were definitely still really good friends. He wanted to move more into rentals, and I wanted to continue flipping. So I'm continuing doing what I'm doing. He's acquiring properties for rentals right now, and so maybe he's the smarter one. But yeah, so we hit our limit with. I think we bought 8 in 1 month, and then we had about 10 total in the inventory, trying to just manage the money and the crews and just everything. And as a 2-man team, we definitely hit our limit on management as well. It was a rough few months.
Oh yeah, I bet. No, I've been up around. I had 10 for a while last year. I actually have 8 right now. So, and I ended up hiring one of my contractors full time this year, just to manage the crews and rehabs and everything, because it was literally taking me a year or longer to rehab some of these properties because they'd just be sitting there for so long, and I was concentrating on other things. It just did not work well. So I'm hoping that helps out that situation.
So is he kind of your project manager then?
Yeah, exactly. He's a
Nice.
contractor who has management background, actually, corporate management background.
Oh,
So
wow.
his job is not to work on them himself, but just to hire people, manage the process, make sure everything's done as quickly as possible. Because that's the biggest roadblock for me is getting those done quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we ran into the same thing where we project manage small crews and instead of having a general contractor type arrangement. And you can only stretch those crews for so far. So we did have a couple houses that sat off to the side for a few months while we were rushing to free up the crews in order to get them started. And that's not a good feeling either when you have vacant houses sitting there that is potential profit just sitting there, vacant and could get broken into or who knows. But
no, that's exactly what happened to me. And it was, it's very frustrating. And I didn't have enough contractors to be able to do it. And as you know, when you start a job, it always takes twice as long as you think it will. And it usually costs more than you think it will. So that's the nature of flipping.
That definitely is. Absolutely.
When you were working with that partner doing that many properties, how were you financing him? Was he kind of was it private money? Were you using bank financing or a mixture?
It was total private money. So no bank funds involved. We've just tracked down a number of private money lenders, got them on board, and over time performed well for them. So we actually ran out of our private funds as well when we bought all of those properties. Basically, we capped out all of our guys, which isn't a great place to be either, because then not like you have time or the energy to buy anymore at that time with our crew. But yeah, so we ran out of time, we ran out of money, but it was all from private money lenders.
Do you have any tips on how to find private money lenders? I mean, that's one of the biggest situations for most people is trying to get that financing and that funding.
Sure. I think finding them is easy because it's basically public record in most states. It's whoever's listed as the mortgager or the mortgage company. And so you can actually online, probably in about 5 minutes with ListSource, find all the private money lenders in your market. The issue is then contacting them and then meeting with them or getting them on board, which the part number 2, which helps is some kind of track record. These guys are pretty smart, pretty savvy. They want to put their money to work, and they probably won't take the chances on new people like a hard money lender would. So track record helps a ton, but finding them is super easy. Getting them on board, that a lot of people do send letters. We actually ended up cold calling, just doing some lookups on who those people were, giving them a call and say, hey, I see you lent on 123 Main Street. We have a project very similar, a few blocks away. And we do basically the same thing as that company that you lent to. And, would you be interested in meeting up and talking about future arrangements, seeing if you're interested in lending more money? And so, enough of those calls and you'll get, a number of people on board. But the track record does help. If you say, hey, I've done 30 deals and never lost money, of course that's huge. And then I wouldn't be afraid to tell them if you did lose money, on a deal and what you learned from it and what you'll do next time. And maybe you've tightened your parameters of what you're buying because of deals like that. You've learned your lesson, your education, so to speak. I wouldn't be afraid to be honest with those people because sometimes they're smart enough to go back and look through your public records to do the math on deals that you sold and go from there. But definitely, reach out and start contacting them because a lot of them are looking to lend more money, especially in tight markets where not a lot of investors are having easy time finding deals. Right now, it's hard to find deals. So those money lenders are hurting a little bit too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think you see right now, the hard money lenders are hurting right now.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I mean, they're advertising, they're looking for deals like crazy because like you said, it's tough to find those deals. And there's a lot of competition now with private money, and some banks will lend on flips too. I'm lucky with my bank that does that, but it's tough. And there's a lot of money coming into real estate too with hedge funds backing hard money lenders now as well, which creates.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Jordan Capital out of Chicago is a hard money lender, and they are backed by, I don't know what hedge fund it is, but they said they have $2 billion or something.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And they're 37 states or 40 states they lend in.
Oh, wow.
So they're kind of changing the game a little bit with hard money that many times is localized, one state, a couple states, and those guys are trying to be a little bigger. So
yeah, push it out across the nation, which makes sense, I guess, if you can get that return.
Right.
They're looking for it.
Yeah, they're looking for deals too, because it's tough.
Absolutely.
So I know you've done flipping recently, or I don't know how recent it was, but you also wholesale as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you get started in the wholesaling, and how's that? And you're doing quite a bit of that right now, I believe.
Right now I'm doing it more. Basically, I'll put it this way: I was flipping full time, and then I transitioned to investing full time. So kind of like you go through a bad breakup. I went through a bad breakup with a GC, and then was like, "Oh, I'm not doing that thing anymore. I'm not flipping anymore." And wholesaled full time for a couple of years. Just any deals that I got, I would just pass along for the quick buck and not have to deal with general contractors or lenders, any of that stuff. And then, of course, when the market tightened back up, I was able to transition back into flipping because you're just leaving a ton of money on the table a lot of the time. And especially with the smaller amount of deals, it makes more sense to squeeze every penny that you can out of them. Back into flipping, wasn't doing any wholesaling for for probably about a year and a half. And then now I'm kind of doing a combo. I'm probably wholesaling half and keeping the other half to flip. Getting started into that was basically, a lot of it was through Bigger Pockets and resources like that, where I was like, oh, okay, I can just assign this contractor. I can just quick close this thing to another investor. And so I got good at that, and just, you have a deal, and a deal's a deal. And many of those deals actually came from MLS, which I know is bad words in the investment world, is wholesaling deals off of MLS. But at the end of the day, a deal's a deal, and it either works for your numbers or it doesn't. And so I got good at finding deals on MLS and passing them off to other investors where there's tons of value there.
Yeah, I know wholesaling off MLS can get a bad name, but really, I mean, if you get a property under contract and it's a good deal for somebody, right, why wouldn't they buy it? I mean, they can't make an offer and kick you out of the contract. You're legally obligated to that contract. So no, and there are different tricks and things you can do on the MLS to find good deals as well. It's not
absolutely.
Like the average investor can just look at MLS and find those same deals that you could or I could. You said you're still finding some on the MLS now in an incredibly hot market.
Yeah, I mean, they're usually not the first day on the market deals. Just so many eyes on those deals. There's 17,000 agents or something in the metro area. And of course, when something first hits the market, it either shows up on their search or it shows up when they first, log into MLS as hot, new, and noteworthy type properties. So there's so many eyes on those that I don't even bother anymore. I don't try to be the first one there and the first one with an offer in hand. That worked absolutely in 2010, but today that doesn't work unless you like wasting a whole lot of your time. So a lot of them are deals that fall through. A lot of them are just they might be listed wrong. They might be listed in the wrong category, or they might be they might be listed in single family residence and it's actually a duplex, or the opposite. It's actually listed in income, but it's a single family property. And so most agents will just only search the single family residences and ignore the investor section or the investment section. So, and there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of little tips and tricks to finding these things that you really only get through experience of being on the MLS for hours a day trying to find these things. And so, a lot of them they've just been overlooked a number of times. And then you have to hunt down and find them. You have to find like the diamond in the rough, so to speak.
Right. No, that's awesome. And one thing I've learned too is, especially on the REO properties and maybe some short sales or even agents who are out of the area will list it completely wrong information in MLS. They won't list the basement. They won't list the square footage right, or the bedroom counts wrong. And there's a few properties I bought that were listed as no basement, 1,000 square feet. And it was a 2,000 square foot house with 2 more bedrooms, a full basement, another bathroom that wasn't listed in MLS. And that comes with experience too, kind of knowing the areas and houses and what typically they have.
Right. Yeah. And if you know that this neighborhood, pretty much everybody has a basement. And then, like you said, if somebody lists something in there as no basement, a lot of agents won't do the extra little homework to figure out what's going on, or they don't have the knowledge to know that no, when that development was built in the 70s, every single one had a basement.
Yeah.
They're just skimming over the data, where I think you have to dig down to find what to find what you're looking for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So you're using MLS to find some of your deals, but you're also doing some other techniques, using direct marketing, networking. How have you kind of expanded from the MLS to get more deals?
Well, mainly out of necessity. Back when I was doing a lot of short sale deals, I got used to knocking on doors of people in default and basically, going through the whole spiel of, hey, what's your plans with the house? This thing goes to sale in, X amount of months, or it goes to sale next month. What are we going to do? When I started in Phoenix, that's basically what I was doing, was knocking on doors. And then I've done it here in Colorado as well. And so basically when the MLS tightened up, it just became a matter of, where are these deals? How can I go find them, get in front of these people? So one way, knocking on doors, obviously. Another way, direct mail. And then obviously networking with as many people as possible, whether it's other wholesalers, other flippers, agent to agent kind of stuff. We're still getting short sale deals from other agents who we've performed for in the past, back when there was a million short sales on the market and we would consistently close on these things. They're still calling and saying, hey, I need an offer on this one to get the process started. And boom, we're in. And we might have to wait 6 months or a year, but we can fill up a pipeline with a number of short sales and go from there. But that's all based on networking and having a good track record in the past.
No, that's super important. I know many kind of real estate gurus and programs teach people to submit hundreds of offers, thousands of offers on properties. And, you're not looking at properties, you're not seeing properties. And if you actually get one under contract, you might not close on it once you actually see the house. But in my experience, that just kills your reputation. That kills your future chances with these agents, because the ones that do a lot of deals, they'll remember who screws them over, who's not performing. And having a good reputation performing is so important to getting good deals now.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you've seen it on the REO side back in 2008, 2009, where you could tell if it was just a template offer that's been shot out to 100 different agents. They basically just have a software that just shoots out offers automatically, and they've never seen the property, and they just quickly get a reputation for being these, letter of intent kind of guys that they're just blasting these out and hoping for the best. And that might work. It might, but your reputation won't be intact after a few years of doing that.
Yeah, and I still get some of those offers.
Do you really?
Yeah. And they send them to me on HUD homes too, which,
nice.
Yeah, you can't even submit an offer with the listing agent on a HUD home. You have to do it through the website. So every time I'm like, this is a HUD home. You can't send me the offer. I know it's like 20% of list price. Please submit the bid online. But yeah.
You didn't do your homework.
Right. You're a real estate agent and an investor. There's a lot of people who say the two don't mix very well. I love being an agent and an investor, but have you found any problems, any limitations with your marketing or doing deals as an agent?
Marketing, you do have to be careful. You do have to do you're supposed to do your proper disclosure. You don't want to mail to a house that is already under contract with an agent. They already have representation, and then this could be seen as kind of going around that agent to go behind the sign, so to speak. So you do have to, I feel that you have to be careful with disclosure. You have to be careful with your marketing. We operate in a little bit tighter parameters, but I think at the end of the day, those tighter parameters do set us apart. I feel like I have more credibility when I meet with a private homeowner as an agent, just saying, hey, I'm governed by a board, by the Department of Real Estate, and I have a good track record with no strikes against me. And I have to use state contracts. Basically things are regulated for a reason. I feel like that sets me apart and gives me more credibility than the average Joe who just shows up and, it could be anybody, and they've maybe done 100 deals or 0 deals, and they might be scamming them or using weird contracts that they got from a guru or who knows what. At least I can show up and say, hey, I have some accountability that I have to answer to. If I were to try to screw you, I have people to answer to. I'd lose my license, which is lost income, which is bad marks on my record, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like, yes, there are limitations. I've never run into a brick wall with them. But at the end of the day, I think that there's actually more pros than cons.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the credibility issue, because you can show, hey, here's my website, here's my company. We've been around for such and such. I've been an agent for so long. You can see I'm a real person.
Yeah,
I'm not.
You can look it up, see if anybody has any complaints against me.
Right.
I mean, it's all right there. I mean,
yeah,
you can't do that with the average guy. So
very true. Now as an agent and you're doing this direct marketing, you're trying to find deals, trying to buy them for yourself or maybe to wholesale. Do you list some of those properties as well? If they are looking for retail value or they're looking for an agent?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like that's just kind of more tools in your tool belt kind of thing where, and I have a couple of those right now that are on the market, or they're under contract now, but it's basically a situation, the situation is they owe X amount and my offer, I'll just straight up tell them, I'll just say, hey, this is where my offer is going to be. You might actually be better off just listing it and selling it. You might actually just make more money at the end of the day, even after paying, 2 agents and everything else, you're going to make more money, so at least you have a couple options for them. And this most recent guy is just basically, I want to help you out however I can, whether that's listing your house for sale or buying it, either option. He opted for listing it for sale, and he will make $45,000 more than my offer. But at the end of the day, I still get paid. I still help him out, and his situation is resolved. He is in a tough situation. So I think that that's awesome that we can still help people and still get paid. I guess if I didn't have my license, I would refer that to another agent, and I would just count it as a loss because they wanted to list their house and I have no way to do that. But since I have my license, boom, we can pick up those opportunities for sure.
Right. No, I do the exact same thing. Like you said, in most cases, they're going to make more money selling on MLS.
Sure.
But then some people they don't want to sell on MLS for whatever reason. Maybe the house is a mess, or they don't want people to see it, or they just want it gone immediately.
Absolutely.
And they'll just choose to sell it. And like you said, if you're not licensed, you can send that to an agent, but legally that agent can't pay you a referral fee if you're not licensed.
Absolutely.
There's some, you might be able to bird dog and get a fee per lead you send. There's some, if you work out something like that, always check state laws. But
yeah, check your own state laws.
Right. But yeah, that agent can't just pay you 25% of their commission if they get the deal. That's not legal. So right now you're doing the wholesaling, some flipping. You've got your real estate agent activities. Now, I know you don't own any rental properties, but do you see that in the plans? Do you see that in the future, branching out to some rentals?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Right now, like I said, I have a partner who's buying up a bunch of rentals. And right now in this market, especially how hot and crazy it is, it doesn't make sense to me here. The numbers that I see from other investors in other markets make a whole lot more sense. I just haven't made that leap yet. I'll likely dip my toes in the water down in Pueblo, which is, about an hour and a half south of where I'm at. So even further from where you're at. But the market is still good. The rental market's still good, but the houses are way cheaper. You can still find $60,000, $70,000 houses or less, and they'll cash flow just fine. So here, median house price is $290,000, $300,000, somewhere around there. That doesn't make sense to me at all. But it's definitely in the future. Absolutely.
I've looked at Pueblo too. There are still some houses in the $40,000 range or less.
Sure.
Now, I don't know Pueblo that well. I don't know what area that is or what those would rent for. But yeah, compared to Denver, what's the cheapest house in Denver now? $200,000.
Yeah, right. I have one under contract at 106, and it's literally the cheapest one I've seen in a long time. But it's not in a great area by any means.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's pretty cheap. It's hard to find them that cheap, and really where I'm at in our market's quite a bit lower than yours. So.
Yeah, and I'm actually kicking myself right now because the last house that I wholesaled in Pueblo was I sold it to an investor for $25,000, and I never saw it. It was a virtual deal. I've never been down there, not in a long time anyways, but I actually bought it for about 11,000. And so after closing, I'm just texting him to follow up, and I'm just saying, hey, thanks for this quick close. Hope everything's well. By the way, how much do you think you'll rent that for? And he was thinking about 850 a month. It was like a 4.2, but it needed a little bit of work, but it wasn't anything crazy. But I'm kicking myself right now for not keeping that at 11 grand.
Wow.
It was just way too good of a deal. But sometimes I'm a little too short sighted. I just want the money now, and I can move on to the next deal. But I think at that time in my life, I was not quite prepared for a rental an hour and a half south of me. So
That makes it tougher when they're that far away.
Oh, absolutely. I think that if that was, a mile away, that would have been a no-brainer. But
yeah. Nice. You talked about virtual wholesaling. Are you just doing that in Colorado, or are you looking at other areas to invest in, or how far out are you expanding?
I've explored that quite a bit in the past. I've done a number of deals down in Phoenix. I was licensed down there for basically, we moved back. And then in about 2009, my partner and I went down and got our licenses down there in order for him to list REO down there. And so we both had our licenses. I figured, hey, it was kind of the same thing. I have the MLS access. I can hunt, from my desk in Colorado to find deals. And, we did find a number of deals. We wholesaled them to a smaller hedge fund that was actually based out of Denver, just kind of a two-man operation kind of thing. And they were buying up a ton of houses down in Phoenix in 2009, 2010. So we would find them. They would send their field guys out to vet them, make sure everything was okay. We would close on it and get paid. So, we probably did 20, 30 deals down there. And so that's how I kind of know that if you have that MLS access, you can do it anywhere. But I haven't done a lot of it since. Pueblo is about as far as I've gone in the last couple of years, but I have looked in other markets. If I had more time or maybe a staff, I could maybe ramp that up. But I'm kind of focusing on what I'm doing right now and not trying to be too scattered with all these things. But I've looked at Wisconsin. I've looked at some other Midwest type markets where it might still make sense, but there's only so many hours in the day, unfortunately. So
right. So walk me through the property in Pueblo that you wholesaled without ever seeing it. How did that process work?
So that was an REO property. I think it was just something that was overlooked. I had a friend who had access to the Pikes Peak MLS, which is what they use down there. And I ended up, just taking a look at it through the pictures and running comps and just kind of seeing what it looked like versus the rest of the neighborhood. I've literally never been on that side of Pueblo. I've probably driven just straight through I-25 and that's it. So I've never been there. And so just trying to figure out what's going on. And so I put it under contract just to see if I had something there. And so what I ended up doing is, this was the second one that I've done down in Pueblo. And so the same buyer from the last time, I just said, hey, go check out this house. Tell me what you think. You're in the area. It's going to end up being yours anyways. Tell me what you think, how much you pay for it, etc. And so he did, and he would end up paying right around what I had it listed for, but it did have some issues. And so like most scumbag REO offers, I went in and I submitted for a price reduction based on inspection and hit that pretty aggressively. I think I managed to hit it right when it got a price reduction on the market. And then I was able to push that down even further. So I think it was listed at 25 and then it went down to 19 and I pushed it down to about 11 based on my inspection. And so that guy was willing to pay 25 for it as is. And so we just ended up, I think we just double closed on it. But yeah, I mean, the process, usually I'd like to have a guy down there who I trust to look at it, but he was that guy. I mean, he was going to end up being the end buyer or not. So it kind of worked out just perfectly on that. So
nice. That's a pretty good deal, making that profit without ever having to see the house.
Yeah, never seeing it, never dealing with it, honestly. So
very cool. I have a question here. I've gone through most of my questions, but you mentioned something about not having any staff. So are you doing everything yourself right now? Do you have an assistant at all, or is it just you?
It's just me. I'm very, I think I'm maybe just a bit too much of a control freak at the end of the day to my own detriment. But my son just started full-time school, so my wife is now going to be a little bit more on board with helping with admin things like contracts and all the little stuff that just takes up a whole lot of time that honestly she's probably better at coming from an administrative type background. So I think we'll start there and we'll kind of go from there. I guess I've never really needed like a huge staff, so I've never had one. I've had some virtual assistants here and there that come and go as needed for marketing type stuff. But overall, I mean, I think that my overall strategy is that I'm not trying to be the biggest, craziest developer or wholesaler or flipper. I protect my time very closely, and I want to be, around for my family and my son and friends and everything like that. So I kind of, I probably do less deals than I could, but I have more than I need. So, I have more money than I need. So that helps in that. And that's just my philosophy on it. But having a huge staff of like 7 people or something, that I have friends who have investment staff, stuff like that. And you walk in and you have to perform a certain amount every single year to keep these people on board, to keep them and their families fed and happy. And at the end of the day, I think that just stresses me out a little bit. But I'll eventually get over that and bring in people to help me grow this a little bit more. But right now, it's just me.
No, that's cool. I mean, I have a big staff now. I don't know, it can be stressful, but at the same time, I hired someone to manage them. So it's not all on me.
There's the end goal right there.
Yeah. But I mean, probably one of the best things I ever did was hire an assistant. And you don't have to have a huge staff. You don't have to have 7 people or 5 people even, but it freed up so much time and it made my life so much easier. And you talk about time for your family. I didn't realize how much the little stuff, the little details were taking my time.
Sure.
How much I hated doing it too until
no kidding.
I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. So,
no kidding.
I can go on vacation without having to worry about everything. And
they can handle it for you. Sure.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, that's about all I've got. Before we end this, I mean, if someone's looking to get started investing in real estate, they don't have a lot of money, what's the best advice you can give them to the first steps they can take to get into the investment game?
I'd say don't be afraid to approach investors or agents or people who are movers and shakers where you're at. And don't be afraid to, do whatever it takes to learn from them. I mean, when I started, I just was doing little crappy jobs for agents and investors in order to gain knowledge, of the market or of the, how to do all these little things. And at the end of the day, those will become, your biggest allies, your biggest fan base. If you find the right people, they're going to want you to succeed. And so, in case in point, when I found, the first person that I worked with in Arizona, she was the one who sold me my first deal, based on, hey, I know you've been, looking and you've been learning and you've been paying your dues. The first person I'm going to hand this to is you. And so I was the only person in line to buy it. And I obviously lucked out really well. But I'd just say, don't be afraid to do little things for people before you start asking for big things. It's kind of earning that credibility or showing them that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. And you don't find a lot of that these days of, some people are like, oh, I would never go dig post holes and put signs in people's yards and do little stuff like that. But if you're young and you have no money and if you have more time than you do money, that eagerness and that willingness to help out people who you're trying to learn from is huge, and it will pay you back a million times over, I think. So,
no, that's great advice. And one other thing you said that I hear over and over again too, when you did your first flip in Colorado, you found the deal and then you got a partner who would fund it for you.
Right.
And I hear so many people who want to find a partner and help them flip, but then they don't have anything to offer. Right. It's like, well, you got to help me find the deal. You got to fund it. You got to help. But if you have a deal, that's something valuable that will attract attention, because that means you're going to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, focus on, deal finding, at least for me, whether I'm wholesaling or flipping, is, finding the deals like 90% of the work. The other 10% is either, trying to resell it if I'm wholesaling, or managing the money and the fix up and then the resale if you're flipping. But finding that deal, if you have no deals in hand, you have nothing. You don't even have an investment business. You have just messing around with creating LLCs and websites, but you have nothing. You have nothing to back that up. So focus on the deals first, and then the rest will fall in place, especially if you have good deals.
No, that's awesome advice. Well, thank you very much, Anson. I really appreciate your time today. If people want to get in touch with you, I know you're on Bigger Pockets a lot. Is Bigger Pockets the best place to reach out to you?
It probably is right now. I'm working on my company site, and it's not quite up to speed yet. So, but yeah, if you go to biggerpockets.com/user/Anson, ANSON, you can reach out to me there. You can send me a message, or read a little bit more about me, or see what I have to offer up there. I've done some blog posts just like you have in the past for them. It's a great place just to connect, and that's how I know you anyways. So even though we're 50 miles apart, we met on the internet. So
right. No, I've met a ton of people from Bigger Pockets, and had lunch with them and talked with them, and it really is a great site to network for sure.
Yeah, I remember that time that I took you to breakfast and then you let me drive your Lamborghini everywhere. Remember that?
I didn't have the Lamborghini yet when we had breakfast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, for sure, I would have let you. Very cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Lots of good information there, and great story on how you kind of rose up to investing and being an agent. Thanks for your time, and I'm sure we'll talk again here soon.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.